Good evening and welcome to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast. And I've got another special guest to talk to tonight, and it's Frank Portinari. Good evening, mate. How are you?
Good evening. And you said the surname very well.
Yeah, good job we spoke about it before we went on air.
Very good.
Yeah. Frank's an author, a motivator, a consultant, and a podcaster. And he's got a fantastic book out there, and I'll plug this a couple of times tonight. There it is, Loyalist Paramilitary Gunrunner from Extremism to Prison. And that is available on Amazon. Joe, get yourself on Amazon, buy that book. Fantastic read, tells you about his life story. It's a hell of a journey. And he's a hell of a character as well. And also in the description box below is a link to his YouTube channel because Frank does podcasts as well, and some really, really good podcasts on there. So please click the link, subscribe to his channel, and give him a follow as well. Some great material on there. And for his sins, he's also a Tottenham Hotspur fan. So we'll be talking a little bit about football as well, because obviously this channel covers crime and football. So, Frank, just a little bit about yourself. Where were you born, first of all, and where did you grow up?
Steve, thanks for inviting me on for a start. I appreciate that.
Pleasure, mate.
I come from Kentish Town, which is in Camden, and I always which is North London, basically. And I always make a point of telling people that Camden wasn't a real borough once upon a time. It was made up. It was made up of St Pancras, which was very working class or very poor. And you'll probably know by the St Pancras, the area. It took in St Pancras Station, Euston Station, King's Cross Station, and a bit north of that. But then you went into Hampstead, which was clearly very affluent, and Highgate. And then to the south of St Pancras, you had Holborn, which again was pretty affluent. That would take in Hatton Garden, for example, and parts of the West End as well. So we was lumped in the middle, basically. We was in the poor bit. And I think the plan was if they lumped us all in together and called us Camden, we're all equal. Well, I can assure you, we definitely weren't equal. It was still outside toilets and tin valves on the wall, on a nail on the wall, and that, we was far from affluent.
Was it a happy childhood?
I don't think you don't analyse your childhood too much. Sometimes you might look back on it afterwards. I think if you're all in the same boat, you tend to get on with it. So if half the kids get on, up to mischief, the other half the kids get up to mischief, don't they? Basically, if they've got nothing, you've got nothing. So yeah, it was okay. It was okay. Family life wasn't the best, if I'm honest. My first dad, they parted basically, my parents, when I was about 18 months. And I did get a second dad, and bless him, he got me mum and inherited me. I don't think that was the plan somehow. But he done his best, but he had very bad mental health problems. And that impacted on my childhood and my early teens. And I spent more time out of the house than in it, let's put it that way. And then my mother had a breakdown as well. Me and my sister was put in a home for a short while. It all sounds very sorry, but you're a kid. You don't really understand it at the time. You go with what you're told to do. I've got a couple of bad memories of it when we was in the home and that. And even to this day, if I pass it, it gives me it freaks me out because I just know it was not a good place to be. Mm. But in the main, listen, as I say, you're out on the street. You're playing. We had all the old houses where we lived. They pulled about 5, 6, 7 streets down, under the pretext of modernising, and all they had to do was put central heating in them and some decent plumbing. They're perfectly good houses. And they decided to pull all these down, which was great for us because we spent our lives in the old houses, getting all the old furniture out and books and so on. And then we discovered lead, copper, cast iron. And we'd take that down our buckles down St Pancras and get a few quid. And that's what you did at kids when you was kids. You'd pull the stalls out down the market. You try to, be less of a strain on your parents, basically.
What was your life like at school, Frank?
Well, in primary school, I was told I was a bright kid. And I think I'm wise enough to know that I was. But when you go to secondary school, I mean, blimey, it's a different world, isn't it? The kids are so much more streetwise. where I went to school, a very, very rough area, very, very rough. And the kids, you know, there was always 3, 4 brothers and 15 cousins. So when somebody says you're getting done after school, boy, you was getting done. They were very thorough, you know what I mean? It wasn't one bloke. So you had to buck your ideas up, and I wasn't a fighter, far from it. You know, like I say to people, I was the class clown, you know, because that worked for me. That made me popular. But invariably, you have a fight, don't you? You have to, one day you just have to have a fight. It's as simple as that. And it was over something so stupid, something really stupid. It was over a pair of football socks, a pair of Tottenham football socks. And I didn't even have the rest of the kit. We were so fucking poor. I didn't have the shorts and the shirt. I just had the socks. But that was my pride and joy, you know. And in the changing room, the kids are throwing them about, you know, and I'm getting more and more annoyed. And the wrong kid, Adam, at the time I caught up with him, and I put my hands around his neck, had him on the floor. And of course, his words, he's going to kill me after school. And I think most of the school knew he was going to and all, you know. And I wasn't likely to put up any resistance. And friends said, go out the other gate, you know, don't, whatever you do, don't go out the back gate, sort of thing. And I'll tell people, he stood there and he kept calling me names and swearing at me. And I thought, hold on, he ain't exactly got around to hitting me yet, has he? And I thought, fuck it, even if he does, how long is the pain going to last, basically? You know, a couple of minutes. And I just thought in for a penny, and I gave him a dig, and he went on the floor. And he was shocked, I was shocked, everybody standing around was shocked. But as a consequence, the next day I was the most popular kid in my class. And, you know, you suddenly get invites to youth clubs, parties at the weekend, but then you get a bit carried away with yourself, don't you? you think you're a bit of a Jack the Lad, and of course, every nutter in the school decided, well, you know, you're not as tough as us, so I paid for it over the coming weeks, that's for sure. You know, but a little bit of respect was earned. You know, it got me through the rest of school. Basically, that was the main thing.
Were you into sports and stuff at school?
Not particularly. No, not particularly. And then, crazy as it sounds, one day we had a new teacher, a new sports teacher, and he made us run around the outside of the school. Well, of course, when we went round the first corner, we all stopped running. He's got a stopwatch, isn't he? So when we come around out at the last corner, we, you know, jogged on a little bit. And of course, he basically said, "You think I'm stupid or something? You know, I think I don't know how long it takes." And he basically told us we'd stay after school. We'll be running around next school until we do a decent time. So then you've got to run it, or you ain't going to go home. So I suppose, you know, you've got a little bit of a competitive spirit. You don't want anyone to be in front of you, so you run that bit faster. Anyway, when I come back round the corner, he said, did you realise how, you know, the time that you did? And I said, no. And he said, you're only so many seconds behind the kid that runs the 440 metres for the school. So there's the value of a good teacher, because I ended up running with the school, which anything that got me out of, you know, academic lessons, if you like, I prefer to go running and competing against the other schools. And from there, he said, how do you feel about doing the triple jump, you know, the old hop, skip and jump? And I ended up representing the school that as well. It wasn't the plan. That's just to say, that's the value of a good teacher. That's someone putting themselves out to do something for you, you know.
What did you do when you...
Sorry, Steve.
No. What were you like, what were you aiming to do when you left school? Did you have any ambitions?
Only to help my mum and dad out, to be honest. Financially, that was the main thing, you know. As I say, I can remember going to school with holes in my shoes, you know, putting a bit of cardboard, you know, cornflake box in the bottom of the shoe, or a bit of lino. And kids won't have that. You know, kids I work with, teenagers, they go, "I'll turn it in." When was that in? You know, the 1800s or something. And I was like, no, it was late 60s, early 70s. It was true. We had nothing, you know. And I'll tell the story, bless her, my poor mum, she come down to school one night, sat in front of a teacher, and he's, you know, bloke said, you know, how can I help you, madam? And he said, well, I'm Frankie's mum. He said, I've never met your son. And of course, my mum didn't realise I'd left school. I'd left school when I was about 14 and a half. And every teacher she went round, they all said the same, we've never met your son. So, of course, when she come up, she wasn't so happy. And I said, Mum, where do you think you're getting them chops every week and chickens? I'm working in Dewhurst down Camden High Street. So, yeah, so there was no ambition as such, if I'm honest. It was just a case of job to job. And then you had the money to go to football. You had the money to go on a Saturday. You had the money to go to a concert on a Sunday. And then, when I kind of got into the drinking culture, was it the money? Did you have enough money to go and have a drink with your mate? So, no, there wasn't a great deal of planning, if I'm honest.
Where did the love of football come? What was the age that you first, fell in love with Tottenham?
Well, in my street, everyone spoke with Tottenham. Everybody spoke with Tottenham because it was the tail end of the double, the 60, 61, then again 62, winning the European Cup Winners' Cup, winning the FA Cup again in 1967. So it was pretty much, most of the kids I knew that lived in the houses supported Tottenham. You always get a Man United fan, didn't you? There's always a Man United fan. But generally it was mainly Tottenham. Then in the flats round the corner, it was mainly Arsenal. So we tended to stay away from them. And when we got older, they had their pub and we had our pub, and that was it. But we played our football in the streets. It was literally up against the gable wall. And, there'd be 20 of them having a game of football across the road because there weren't so many cars in them days, was there? And we'd literally stay out till dark, And so that was the actual playing it. And then I was very lucky because I lived right near Parliament Hill Fields and Hampstead Heath. So you could play over there. But of course, if you want to see your heroes, you've got to go to football because you didn't have the television in that days, did you? Well, you had 2 channels probably. So, you might have been, I can't even remember if we had match of the day. You certainly didn't have as much football as what you got now. I mean, almost every day of the week. So if you wanted to go and see your heroes, so in those days, for me, that would have been Martin Chivers, Alan Gilzine, Martin Peters, Pat Jennings. If you wanted to see them, you had to go and go and watch them. And I loved it. And the first time I ever went over to White Hart Lane, I couldn't believe it, the atmosphere and that massive shelf at one side that they used to have at the old stadium. And I got the bug, I certainly got the bug. And there's a certain amount of kudos as well because I went to my first away game when I was 14 to Manchester City, and I went on my own, the old main road. And we lost 4-0. I went in the wrong end of the stadium and was surrounded by hundreds of Manchester City skinheads who all had bleached jean jackets and bleached jeans, so it was all sky blue, their colours. And I remember a copper coming over, dragging me and making me stand down with a fella and his 2 kids. And I left before the end. I got chased. I got off the bus and got chased back to Piccadilly Station. And when I got in the station, there was some Tottenham skinheads, much older than me. And of course, they said, come and stand with us. So the following week, when I went over to Tottenham for the home game, and I'm walking with me and my skinny little mates walking down Tottenham High Road, and we passed the pub. There was all these older fellas, and they're all going, hello, Frank. All right, mate, how are you? Of course, my mates are saying, who's that? That's my mate. I was up in Manchester with him, and I was full of shit. He done the trick. So, of course, when I went into work into school on Monday, everyone was going, God, you want to see Frank's mates? Oh, blimey, And the trouble was, Steve, I thought I was like him, and so, of course, when there was a little bit of trouble, it was all right. Me thinking I was getting stuck in. I used to get punched all over the place, basically.
Was that the start of the the camaraderie? Did it feel like being with a group of people that was you felt as if you were part of something?
I had no brothers for a start. That didn't help. As I say, I had two different dads, so I didn't really feel I had a father figure, to be honest. I did have a few uncles, but they were doing their own thing. They didn't have time for me, kid. So yeah, the football was definitely the camaraderie, and as I always say, that's where you learn. You learn, who your friends are. Even people you don't know, but if you take a step forward, they'll take a step forward. More to the point, they might take a step back. And in the days you used to go in other people's end of the ground, when they said we're going through that turnstile, well, some people went through the turnstile, of course. A lot of them didn't go through the turnstile. And sometimes it was the bigger blokes even, the older blokes. told other people to do it. They didn't necessarily themselves. But once you're the other side of that turnstile, you find out what you're all about, don't you? And
did you get a buzz from it, Frank?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, there's an old Chelsea boy, Jason Mariner, and I think he was the first fella to sort of use the term. It's a drug. It was certainly a drug for me. Certainly a drug for me. And but he says, where do you get treatment for that? You can get treatment for being a drug addict or an alcoholic or a gambler. He said, where do you get cured of being apart from getting nicked and put in prison? To get you off the street. There's no cure for it. And if it's your culture, if that's what your mates are doing, let's face it, every Wednesday, home and away, or Saturday, home and away, European games, pre-season friendlies, games in Europe. If they're going, you're going. And it did become a bug. There's no doubt about it. And the more people recognise that you don't run, they follow in behind you then. Or when you see them the next week, they go, hello, mate. They don't even know each other's names. You don't even know each other's names. You might know where, geographically where you come from, but you don't necessarily, that comes much, much later. You might have a nickname, people knew I came from Kentish Town and that was it really. There was a great deal of camaraderie in it. And I still got pals now from, 40 odd years ago.
How organised was it?
I don't think it was so organised then. I mean, if you're going back to the 70s, it was very much just hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, I always say that if Tottenham was playing Manchester United, Liverpool, Newcastle, at White Hart Lane, there would be thousands of Northerners would come down. I can remember games against Man United, I didn't even get in. I didn't even get into the stadium, and that's when the stadium would hold 56,000 people. Sometimes you'd be lucky to get in. It was less organised, and people went in different ways. And then you was an easier target as well, because you weren't all necessarily all together. But clearly that changed, didn't it? I mean, later on in the 80s and the 90s, it became far more organised. And I describe it as you was punching somebody, you was getting punched from the side from somebody else or from behind. It was all very messy, let's put it that way, But personally, I found it was less posing. I found it was just, you went over there, you had your donkey jacket on, you weren't worried about getting your £80 fucking jumper cut up and all that, or what your hair looked like. And I'll tell the story. I was in work one day and there were two young Millwall boys, Tommy and David, and they were literally asking each other what they were going to be wearing on Saturday. And I said, what the fuck is all that about? I could not imagine asking any of my mates what they were going to wear on a Saturday to go to a football match.
Yeah, it all changed in the 80s. I mean, in the book I did, Enemy from the Bender Squad to the Gremlins, we covered the full transition of the football hooligan scene up here. And you're right, the 80s. I mean, I always say the Enemy were really well organised. I mean, they were using the Purcell tickets on the trains, you made it easier to travel. There was about a 250, 300 head strong group, and they were all putting £1 into the kitty so that if anybody got nicked, they were paying the fines. It was so well organised, but the fashion changed, and the Scousers like to take the credit for that. But I think, we all had our own different fashions, and Newcastle went from the donkey jackets, which Spurs were wearing obviously at the same time. Then it went to Pringle jumpers, didn't it? And
that's right. Yeah, Pringles. Yeah. No, I think it was a standing joke, wasn't it? Years ago, I've said it before. It used to be fucking Northern monkeys and all that. We're from London, we know how to dress. Well, that wasn't true, was it? When it got to the 80s, that had completely gone out the water. Going over to Europe and hoisting all the gear and so on, or when people used to come down to the West End of London, that completely changed. You couldn't say Northerners weren't smart anymore, because they were very smart, And so my generation, we didn't really care what we looked like, to be honest. But that did change. And I kind of missed that, but I recognise how smart it was. I must admit, people did used to look very, very smart. But it just wasn't me, to be honest.
Gary Milligan says, hi Frank, been to Tottenham a few times, but the main one I remember is the FA Cup game when Clive Allen scored the only goal. He says, I also remember Alf Garner taking the piss out of 12,000 Newcastle fans.
Oh. I'll tell you what, he hasn't lied about that, 12,000.
Yeah, I remember that game. It was 85.
There was 12. I mean, there was 12,000 easy.
That could have been a Hillsborough job, that. I remember that game, and we've talked about it a few times on our retro show on here. But did you follow England? No,
not really. If I'm honest, I didn't really do that because I couldn't have found myself amongst other supporters, to be quite honest. And I know it did used to kick off occasionally. And I thought, sod this, I'm taking a risk every weekend following Tottenham. Never mind, following England as well. But going back to the Geordies, like, well, mate, that day that high road, it was just black and white. It was just, it was amazing. I went to Newcastle. I remember going there in the semi-finals of, I think it was the League Cup.
And we played, it was.
And there was a lot of trouble at Tottenham that night. And, I can remember Newcastle fellas, crawling under cars to get away. It was really bad. But, God, when we went up with the second leg, I mean, literally, we got off the train and there was people on the platform waiting. And it wasn't just football fans, I'm telling you that now. It felt like half of Newcastle had turned out as if to say, you fucking cockneys ain't saying a liberty up here. And we got a proper riding that night. There's no doubt about that. We got a proper riding.
Yeah, I mean, the football hooliganism stuff is fascinating, and it reflects probably on the social times as well, doesn't it? I mean, especially the 80s. The miners' strikes, Thatchers, Thatcher's reign really did hit the north more than anything else, but it hit the whole of the UK the way that she ran the country, and a lot of deprivation in a lot of areas, Frank, and that meant that people were frustrated, and if they weren't rioting on the streets in Brixton, they were rioting at football.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, when we was growing up, I mean, I saw the tail end of Mods and Rockers, for example. So, my old man would say to me, "Hey, you're fucking idiots, you lot. And the football, fighting each other." And I say, "Hold on, you was a rocker. What did you used to do when you went to Southend or Margate or Brighton? Then wasn't you not fighting the Mods? Just a different generation, wasn't it?" So we found it was just our way of finding our entertainment. It was our identity, wasn't it? We found something different. And Teddy Boys, I mean, God, how much more violent do you need them to be with their razors and so on? So I think we just discovered our own identity more than anything else. I just didn't expect it to last this long, quite frankly.
What music were you into then, Franklin?
I was very lucky because living in Camden, we had so many great venues. Dingwalls, a music machine, which turned into the Camden Palace, which is now Coco's. You had the Electric Ballroom, you had the Forum, you had the Dublin Castle. Where Madness was just a little bit younger than me, but we were surrounded by music venues, and we also learned very quickly that that's where you got a late drink. So you went to the Camden Palace, where the pub shut at 11, the Camden Palace shut at 2. So you get a drink. But all kinds of music. It was all kinds of music, and early 70s was a lot of glam rock, wasn't it? It was coming out of the sort of hippie 60s, and I did like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. I suppose my favourite band at the time would have been Nazareth. I quite liked Nazareth from Scotland. But I like all kinds of music, if I'm perfectly honest. Depends what mood I'm in. My girls laugh because they'll say, "Dad, moment you're sitting there listening to Sade, next minute it's Led Zeppelin or The Doors or something like that." Something real, and groups they've never even heard of, quite frankly. But I could have an afternoon listening to soul music. It could be anything. It really could.
Yeah, broad range of music.
Yeah.
Police, obviously. Were you ever nicked? Going to football?
Oh yeah. In fact, I actually got nicked twice in one day.
Oh, tell us about that.
In the 70s, it was. We were playing Arsenal, and all the Arsenal boys come out the road. We were standing outside a pub, and it all kicked off. And I got my collar felt, taken down to Tottenham, police station in the High Road. They kept me until after the game had finished. Of course, I didn't know the score. So I come out the front of the police station, and there's people walking down the road, and I said to the bloke, "Hey, mate, what was the score?" He said, "We got beat 5-0. And I got nicked again. Different copper, obviously. I got nicked again. And but it was the same desk sergeant. He stood there looking at me frowning, and he went, "I've had you once today, ain't I?" I said, "Yeah, mate, you have, as it happens, yeah." And fair play to him, he put me in a cell for about an hour, and he let all the crowd go. He went, "Go on." And he let me go. So I only got the one charge. I only got the earlier charge. And I remember where it was £25 fine, which it doesn't sound a lot, and I don't suppose it was a lot, but your wages might have only been about 12 quid, tenner, £12 at the time. So £25 was a little bit of a lump, but obviously it was better than, going to prison. But in them days, you had to really do a lot to go to prison. I mean, I had mates got nicked every other week. It's crazy. And you didn't always get charged. I got nicked up in Liverpool. I got nicked up West Brom. 9 times out of 10, you got chucked out, didn't you? You didn't actually get charged with anything. But I did get charged at West Brom. I did get charged at Liverpool. I got nicked again at Arsenal. What did I get for that? I got a month suspended for a year. And then the judge said to me, he said, and I fine you £100. He said, "How do you win £10?" I said, "I tell you the truth, I'm a little bit short at the moment." He went, 28 days. I thought, I said, "What'd you bother fucking asking for then?" Yeah, 28 days, you give me. And of course, what happened? A few weeks later, I got nicked up in Liverpool. So I knew if I was guilty, found guilty, that I was going to do that month straight away. And then what they lumped on top of that. But I'll give you a little tip out there, fellas. If you get nicked up in Liverpool, use the word twat, which is a word Cockneys do not use. Because there were 3 judges, and both coppers quoted from their books. I ran across the road and said, "I'll kill you, you fucking twat." And I sat there and went, "What?" And I noticed that the woman judge saw my face. And at half time, I give my mate my raincoat. I took my watch off, give him my wallet. I said, "I don't know if I'm coming home with you on the train." And when I went in the second half, they said, "Have you got anything to say?" And I said, "Yes, Your Honours." I said, "I've lived in London all my life, and I know a fair bit about, London culture." I said, "Both those officers there quoted that I used a certain word." I said, "I've never used that word in my life. Case dismissed, and I got £160 costs." All because of all the words they could have used. They used they said it as they would say it. Yeah. So I used to shout to my mates, "You ever get nicked up in Liverpool, keep shouting twat as many times as you like and then deny it." But I did get off. See, I was lucky. And I was banker rights. I mean, I was proper banker rights. But as I say, that one word kept me out of prison.
Okay, good stuff. I mentioned right at the top of the programme, you've got a book out, Loyalist Parliamentary Gun Runner, a great book. It's available on Amazon, and you've also got a podcast. The link's in the description below. The description for the book on Amazon, wow. I mean, if this doesn't sell it to anybody, I don't know what will. A Londoner enters a world of guns, bombs, and assassinations until the special branch of the police and military intelligence step in. Frank's years as a peaceful football fan and socialist end abruptly when he turns to hooliganism and British nationalism. In the menacing drinking clubs of Belfast, he takes orders from prominent loyalist paramilitaries. His crimes escalate until the media and authorities uncover his secretive and dangerous existence. How on earth did that happen? How did you walk into that life?
It was in my teens, I was a young socialist. I was genuinely a young socialist. I'm very idealistic. I always say this, a bit naive as well. But the people who got me involved with the young socialists were nice people, good people, well-intentioned people. What I didn't know at the time was that the young socialists were arm of the Workers' Revolutionary Party. I didn't know that until I went to the first meeting. And what I didn't like was they were talking about subjects I didn't really know about. They were talking about Ireland. And all I remember is they were very derogatory about the British Army. And I think that brought out a side in me that I didn't really, a bit of patriotism I didn't even know I had, apart from watching England on the telly, if you like, with the football. But I persisted with it because I believed in the socialist side of it, you know, better housing, education, health, etc. That did ring true. But they were all very middle class. Up until that point, I didn't even know what the middle class were. I knew the working class, and that was it. So I was worried about the working class bloke down the road, not the workers or the students in South America or Africa or somewhere else. You know, I was more worried about the people who lived around me who had nothing. So I suppose that's where the nationalist side of it came in. I was more worried about national politics than I was international politics, so to speak. But it got to a point where my mate said to me, Frank, it's the football or the politics. And I took the hint and I said, no, fair enough, fellas. And I went back to the football. You know, I dropped the politics out. And years later, a fella come in a pub one night, mate of mine worked down Smithfield Meat Market, and he was right wing. Well, I didn't know any more about the right wing, I knew about the left wing. And he invited to a meeting. Of course, there's all these working class blokes. Blokes I automatically identified with, you know. And this is where my addictive nature comes in, right? This is where, if I'm passionate about, you know, now my family, if I'm passionate about the football, whenever I get involved, I'll get very passionate about it. And some would say extreme, and I don't, you know, mind being described that way. And I became my local organiser for the National Front. I went all over the country, marches, paper sales. Election time, I made myself busy, and yeah, that's what I was known where I lived. At the football, I sold newspapers. That's what I was known for.
So I mean, like I remember going to St James's Park, and I remember seeing, you know, people selling, you know, skinheads selling magazines, you know, outside, you know, and to be honest, I didn't know what it was. I was a kid. I was, you know, I was 11, I was 12. It didn't really mean anything to me. But you know, years later, when you look back on it, you know, fans, rightly so on Tyneside, are horrified at that. We classify ourselves.
I know fellas, you know, going back to one of the most violent incidents in Lewisham, you know, in the 70s. And again, it's amazing how much of that is born out of camaraderie. Someone else is going, so you go. We all go. We all drink together. We all go football together. So we'll all go together. And some of those people, going back now, could not be more multiracial if they tried. Mm-hmm. As they got older and, you know, went into different circles and so on. So back then you would have been described as racist. But 9 out of 10 people I knew weren't. They were very patriotic. They were very Britain for Britain. I'm not suggesting they never ever said a bad word, you know, against someone from another culture or another colour. That would be ridiculous. But it wasn't so nasty as what the left used to describe it as. You know, we saw ourselves as patriots. That's what it was about, and very, you know, working class patriots. But I can't speak for everybody. I mean, I'm speaking for me and my immediate circle of friends. And then what was happening was in London, you started to get, you know, there were bombings. You know, weapons would be found every now and again. I mean, even where I lived, you know, near Amsterdam, they found a cache of weapons there. And twice a year, you'd get parades come through London. You'd have the troops out parade, and you'd have the anti-internment parade, the Irish Freedom Movement. And we used to think, hold on, 2 months ago, there was a bomb in London, and you fuckers are walking up the road singing your IRA songs with Scottish Republican bands at the front. And we got the hump about it, and we said, right, we got to attack these parades. Well, that would happen year in and year out. Of course, the same as the football, the police would get to know you, you know, who you are. And basically, in the end, we said, well, listen, when you weigh it up, it's not exactly even, is it? They're blowing us up, and we're having a punch up with them. It's not even, is it? You know, they might get a black eye, they're blowing you up. It's, you know, and people start to say, what are we going to do about it? Well, who was we to do anything? We're just ordinary London fellas. We weren't particularly that political. We weren't Orangemen. We weren't apprentice boys. Some of us might have supported Rangers, you know, rather than Celtic. But we knew what we liked and what we didn't like, and we didn't like this going on in our city. And eventually, we approached somebody who had connections in Belfast, and there was an existing commander in London, and we met him. Thoroughly unimpressed with him. We just thought he was a drunk, to be quite honest. we said there's no way we're putting ourselves behind this fella. And then the fella we originally met, he couldn't wait to get in this fella's seat, and everyone was going, "No, Frank, we want you." And I said, "Oh, listen, let him get on and do what he wants to do." And to cut a long story, it's a very, very, which is why you would need to read the book. But one night we basically put it on this fella and said to him, someone said, "Look, we've got a catalogue here. You can have any weapons you want." And he said, good man, speak to Frank. And another mate went, "Hold on, you're supposed to be in charge. We take a dive, you take a dive." And we could see he never had the bottle for it. We could see he wanted a position. He wanted to go back to Belfast. He wanted to go to Scotland and Liverpool and Corby and places and say, "Oh, I'm in charge. I'm the commander." And we thought, well, he can't even, if he can't even sit down and talk about weapons, he's never going to use one, is he? That's for sure. So over a course of time, we basically plotted up. There were existing people already there, so we had to be respectful to them, And we were basically the new kids on the block. We was the new kids on the block. We went to Belfast. We met certain people. We made a commitment, and that's how it started. And then we went all over the country. We discovered that 9 out of 10 people weren't at all militant. We couldn't believe they had the cheek to call themselves a paramilitary organisation. And we basically identified those that were or potentially were, and built up relationships with them. And basically, those that didn't want to be militant, we told them to sling the rock, unless they had a function. Don't get me wrong. If they were going to collect money for the loyalist prisoners, for example, if that was their thing, that was their thing. As long as they didn't ask questions about anything else, and that was fine. But I'm going to show you the original book, right? This is the original book, right? Now this is called Left, Right, Loyalist, and that's when some people thought that was a reference to marching, the left, right bit. That's where I was in the left, then I went to the right, and then obviously I become a loyalist. And below that it says from one extreme to the other, because that's exactly what I've done throughout my life. I've gone from one extreme to the other. And then, as I say, the book was renamed, and you've already shown that, so I appreciate that. So you might see this one on Amazon, but that's the one you're going to get because it was renamed because that was basically, I was advised that would draw more attention. So sorry, Matt.
Yeah. So I mean that in itself. I mean, it sounds, you didn't have a plan when you left school. You're interested in football. You get involved with the football crowd. You're having a ruck on a weekend and spending time with your mates, and it led to this situation. But none of it was pre-planned. It just sounds. Looking back now on your story, do you feel as if you were coerced into it? Do you feel you're just one of these people who goes with the flow? Did it just seem like a good idea at the time? It's a strange one. I'm
really
interested.
glad you asked that question. I am really, really glad you asked that question because being older now, looking back on it, people have said exactly the same thing. Did you feel like you was radicalised in some way? I was the one doing the radicalising. I know that now, not consciously. And I say this. How many of my mates stuck by me because they were sticking by me? They may have initially, been a bit idealist, wanted to support the cause. But I think a fair few of them stuck by me because of me. And I accept that. So in some way I'm responsible for them. But it was always going to happen. It was always going to happen, Steve, because if people follow you at football, and they know they can trust you, they like being in your company, you can always have a laugh, you're never going to leave them in trouble, and you move on to something else, well, they're liable to follow you into that as well. And that's what's happening in a lot of cases. A lot of my mates, a lot of associates, followed me. But no, I'll take full responsibility. Because look, we've mentioned a word already, camaraderie. The camaraderie. And there was a certain amount of kudos involved as well.
A bit of peer pressure in there?
No.
Peer pressure, but you were putting peer pressure on your mates, maybe, who
not
were
conscious, not
consciously.
Not consciously, but maybe, yeah. But then again, you see, if if you stand on a stage, if you go to Belfast on a particular night, you know, it gets to 10 o'clock, people be drinking, you know, and there's 200-300 people, and the lights go down. Simply the Best comes on, and, you know, 10, 12 armed men, you know, walk through the crowd, go up on the stage. Place goes mad, doesn't it? Place goes absolutely mad. You know, someone's already been up to me, whispered in my ear, Frank, you're going to come up on the stage in a minute. So you go up on that stage in front of 200, that's 200 people. That's intoxicating. And I'm not going to lie about that. You know, and you know there's a certain amount of kudos involved. And your mates are sitting there looking up at you, thinking, fuck me, he's got even more respect than what we thought we had. And more to the point, what it also identifies as well, that you've got the power of life and death. It's a big responsibility. You know, you can have people hurt, you can have people badly hurt. You know, you've got to use that wisely. Some people did, a lot of people didn't, unfortunately, and that sort of comes to light over the years. But yeah, there was a certain amount of respect you got from people, and who knows? You know, as I say, some sociologists might sit there now and go, oh, you know, well, he couldn't get enough, you know, violence at the football. So when he got involved in the street politics, that wasn't violent enough for him. So he decided to join a paramilitary organisation. But at the time, it wasn't thought out like that. You know, I can understand why people might make that interpretation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Your crimes.
I take full responsibility though, Steve. I'm not going to blame anyone else. You know?
Yeah, that's fair enough. Your crimes escalate, it says, you know, in the bump on the back of your book. How did the crimes escalate, and how did the media and authorities act when they found out what you were up to?
Well, how it comes about, Steve, if you've gone around the country and you've called people out, you know, I remember going to a club, and I won't name the club or the geographical area, you know, me and a friend walked in and we called them frauds. We said, you're fucking frauds. You're standing there with your T-shirts on, or your polo shirts, your tattoos, your badges. What do you do, you know? Or what have you done? Of course, when we went to go back to the car, they weren't very happy, was they? They don't want to be spoken to like that, understandable. And as they come across the car park, you know, one of us pulled a, you know, Browning 9mm automatic out of the inside of the overcoat and went, we'll keep coming. And that's when people start taking you serious, then, don't they? People start knowing you ain't fucking about. So if you've gone all around the country, you've pulled people up and said, listen, you're frauds. You call yourself a paramilitary organisation, what do you do? I mean, occasionally some of them will say, oh, you know, we give guns to the boys over there. And I said, oh, yeah. And then when they go to prison or they get fucking shot, what do you do? You know, sing a song about them. Why aren't you doing it? You know, well, if you're called a commander, I expect you to be doing something. Not just fucking sitting there drinking a pint, giving it the big one in front of kids. So once you've done that, you've got to prove yourself, ain't you? Because otherwise you're no better than them. So then, of course, we did start buying weapons. And then we did start following people. We did start targeting people. And that was quite a range of people. And unfortunately, it got to a stage where it was so bad in the 80s and the early 90s, that, you know, tit-for-tat stuff that was going on. Your targets become less discerning. You completely change. Your whole mentality, you know, changes. You just either want revenge or you want to make a statement. And I'll describe it now in some of the talks that I do. I call it a treadmill. Get on a treadmill, press the start button, and you keep going. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right, don't look behind you. You just keep going. And I stayed on that treadmill for too long. And it's only when you hit the stop button and you get off and think, fuck me, where have I been? And what on earth was I going to do? That you suddenly realise, wow, how did this happen? You've asked the same question. How did this happen? But you don't see it at the time. You don't see it at the time. It's like someone said, why did you go to football for 30 odd years? It's just what you did every week. It's what you did. You know, and it was the same with this. I just carried on, and it was clearly going to end badly. It had to end badly. But the media, yeah, you know, different left-wing magazines and so on. And there was programs like World in Action, Panorama, Critical Eye. There was, you know, more of the connection was coming up between the right-wing and loyalist groups and so on. So it was only a matter of time. And there were a few incidents. And of course, you know the police are going to be on you. They're going to be on you. And that was everything from special branch to military intelligence. And I was warned enough. You know, they said, we'll give you enough rope. They sat and told me about something that happened over a particular weekend. You know, I was sitting in the back of a car with 2 military intelligence fellas, and they told me chapter and verse. And the only reason I stayed calm was I thought, well, hold on, I'm in the back of a car, aren't I? If I was in trouble, I'd be in a police station, wouldn't I? Or I'd be in an holding centre somewhere. But I'm in the back of a car. So really all they was doing was saying to me, listen, we know everything you're doing. And it was to assassinate somebody. That should have been the wake-up call. That should have been the wake-up call for me, for them to have known exactly all my movements over, 2-3 days. But 2 years later, well, obviously, I did get caught.
How did you get caught?
A total balls up, basically. And I did something that I used to preach to other people: do not do. Don't lose your temper. You know, and I know now we was set up. I definitely know now we were set up. We were asked to send a quantity of weapons, 7 handguns. They didn't know they didn't know how many there were. They just knew there was a bag full of guns. This is people back in Belfast, and someone went up on a Saturday to Birmingham, and I was meant to meet someone from Belfast at Perry Bar Stadium. Well, anybody from Birmingham knows that Perry Bar Stadium is a dog track. Well, this other fellow went to some athletics park. We didn't know this till afterwards. So my contact, if you like, my fellow came back, and I said, "What happened? You know, I'm annoyed. It's going to make it embarrassing. You know, we're not doing our job." And he said, "Well, the fellow never turned up." So I lost my temper, and it was May Bank Holiday Monday, 1993. And I lost my temper, and I said, "Fuck it, I'll do it myself." Should never have done it. But there we were, me putting a bag in the boot of a car, 7 handguns, and the armed bill come out of everywhere. You know, the armed police. You know, well, 2 fellas walked towards me. 2 fellas walked towards me on the pavement, and they wouldn't get out of the way. And I was just about to say, "Get out of the fucking way!" Opened up their coats. And they had Hitler and Cox hanging around their fucking necks. And it was just get on the floor, get on the floor. I looked to see where my Cody was. Another cop had an handgun. He smashed me in the cheekbone. I went to jump up because it hurt, and I wanted to get him. And then all of a sudden, there's a machine gun at the back of your head. You know, bundled into a car, and that was it. We banged the rods.
So you went to court, and what happened there?
Well, my brief wanted me to go not guilty, and I was looking at 10 to 14 years, and I thought, it's all right with you, mate. If it goes wrong, I'm the one doing the burden, not you. And I'll just go back a little bit because I was on Cat 8 for a while, 9 months, and one of the Codees went home after about 6 weeks. They couldn't prove he knew it was in the bag. So the only person who could get him in trouble was me. So he walked. The fellow from Belfast, well, he was useless, absolutely useless. And but he could have got off. If he'd have kept on saying he didn't know it was in the bag, he'd have got off. But when we went to court, they'd done a deal for him. They said, "We'll give you 2 to 3 years if you go guilty." So he did that. And I just wanted to get it over and done with, Steve, to be honest, because I thought, what the fuck are they going to bring up? What other charges are they going to bring up? Let's just get this out of the way. Anyway, it came to the crunch. They made a proper example of me in the court. They made sure that the press and the law students knew that I was the bad boy. And anyway, right out the blue, they give him 15 months. Well, they gave me 2.5 years. So they gave him 2.5 years. We'd done 9 months already on remand. He had 6 months left. And then the court sort of went quiet, and I thought, here we go. And the judge gave me 5 years. And the screw went to pull my arm as if to say, "Come on, let's go." And I went, "What are you fucking doing?" I'll just put this light on a minute.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
And he said, "No, he's giving you 5 years." I couldn't believe it, Steve. I couldn't believe it. And I go down the stairs, and I pass his brief, his barrister. And his barrister says, "You're a very lucky man." Well, how did you work that out, man? I'm going to prison for 5 years. He said, "You know." So he must have told him everything. So I go in the room, there's my brief there, and he's his assistant. They both turned over a bit of paper. One had 10 and one had 12. And I said, "Well, how did you work that out then?" He said, "Because the judge cannot, I don't understand the law." And he said, "The judge cannot give you a disproportionate sentence. He's already given you twice as much. So if he'd give you any more than that, we'd have taken it to appeal." And that's what the judge explained to the law students in a roundabout. I didn't know the terminology.
Yeah.
That's what he was basically saying. He'd already said, "I'm looking down both." If I'd have got 8, I'd have been happy. And he said that you're looking down both barrels of a double-figured sentence. And I thought, fuck, here we go. There's 10 for a start. But that's what he was explaining to the law students. Oh, and in the media, clearly. So I ended up with 5 years. It was like, wow, that was a result. But of course, all through the sentence, I'm thinking they're going to come back. They're going to come back. You know, I was waiting for conspiracy charges to other things. But thankfully, they did come and see me up at the end of the sentence. I knew they'd be waiting outside. And I wasn't sure whether I was being gate arrested or not. Because they'd asked to come and see me in the last couple of weeks. And I said to the screw, "Tell them to fuck off, I don't want to talk to them." They've had 2.5 years to talk to me. But they offered me money, you know. I'd passed all my qualifications to industrial cleaning. I'd taken assessor certificates. So they knew I was going to start my own business. And of course, they offered me a few quid to go with it. Like, and I just said, "Fuck off, like, no, nothing to do with you, you know." But I forgot to tell you, the first man I met on the Cat A yard was someone you would know, Charlie Bronson. My first day in prison on the Cat A yard, there's this bloke marching round wearing a bib and brace and hobnail boots. I thought, who the fucking hell's this? And he come up, he said, I've heard about you and your mates on the radio, you know. And he said to me, "What's your football team?" I thought, oh, fuck. I said, Tottenham. He went, "Oh, good man." He's Tottenham, and I thought, what a touch. And so it's just ironic he was the first bloke I met. And I got on with him. From what you could see, you saw each other for 20 minutes, if you were lucky, a day. It wasn't raining. But I still write to him now, Charlie. I do write to him, and he was very, very entertaining. Even when he was banged up, he was entertaining. And I'll tell you one quick story. We had Michael Sams turned up.
All right, okay. Mm-hmm.
Now he kidnapped Stephanie Slater. He kept her in a box, and in Newark. And I think he'd interfered with her and all, to be honest. But anyway, he wanted to kidnap. He wanted to ransom money. He got caught. But he had a false leg. And they wouldn't let him have it in the cell. It had to be up against the wall outside. And one particular morning, Charlie wanted to get off the yard a bit quick. And I thought, that's not like him. He's normally the last one up there. Anyway, he's gone. Oh, this Sam's came down. I said, "You can fuck up. I ain't walking around here with him." I said, "I'm not having it." No, I'm not having it. Anyway, the screws took him away. Charlie goes. When I come up, there's a big commotion. He's nicked the leg, Charlie. He took Sam's leg and banged himself up. Well, of course, the screws ain't going to go in that cell, are they? You do not want Charlie armed with a fucking leg. I don't know what it was made of, plastic, I'm assuming. But they knew better than to go in that cell. And of course, it was all like, "Charlie, Charlie, can we have Mr. Sam's leg?" He weren't having it. But bless it.
Did you get through your bird okay?
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit there and give it all the big and go, "It's easy." Yeah, easy. It fucking wasn't easy. Cat A was not easy. I'll say this, you live like a dog, freezing cold cell, getting into bed, with your clothes on under the blankets. You didn't want to touch the metal frame of the bed because it was freezing. You got to write a letter to your loved ones. Your hands would cramp up through the cold. It was slopping out, 1 shower a week if you was lucky. Your phone calls were recorded. No gym, no church. Yeah, they brought the canteen to your door. Your food was brought to the door. And you basically banged out 23.5 hours a day. Yeah, it was no fun. It was no fun. And I'm not going to say, young fellas, it's all right. It was all right. I mean, different now. It was 1993. Of course, the first visits were behind a screen. And then you had closed visits. So I remember the first closed visit with my wife. And I said, babe, I'm glad I got caught. And she couldn't believe it. She said, what do you mean by that? And I said, where did you think this was leading? Where did you think this was going to end up? You can't be in charge. You can't have guns wrapped around you and not use them. Of course, she asked the fatal question then, are you telling me you'd have shot someone? And I said, well, I say to this day, I don't even answer. I think I kind of went, as if they go, well, yeah, So that should have been a wake up. That also should have been a wake up call. That should have definitely have been, this is the end of the line. But I went to various prisons. I got on with it. I went to Swaleside on the Isle of Sheppey. Done my courses there. That was good. That was the best part of that. I don't smoke. So that was handy because I had my own tobacco then. I had other people's tobacco. So I was dealing the tobacco out, phone cards, buzzy cages. I say to people, I've had this chain there 20 odd years. That was from prison. That was the deal we said. And the thing I didn't do was the drugs. I think the screws were good as gold, as long as I didn't get involved with any drugs. I made hooch. I mean, that was different, Used to make bottles of hooch. But if you wanted cigarettes, not cigarettes, if you wanted tobacco, people don't want to give you the double bubble back, so they give you phone cards. So at the time, it was £2 a card. For some mad reason, if you had 7 cards, that was £14, but people would give you a £20 note for it. So some people wanted cash for their business, some people wanted tobacco, some wanted phone cards, some wanted a bit of everything. Someone would come in, they'd want to say a buzzy cage, or they'd want, it kept me busy, quite frankly. But it also got me in trouble because eventually someone wants to rob you, don't they? And so one night, 2 black fellas came to the door. I'd literally just had a jug of hot water, 5 to 8, and as I turned, I sort of caught them out of the corner of my eye. They was coming to rob me, obviously, and as far as I was concerned, I ain't doing it. And I just launched a jug of water over them. So it wasn't pre-planned, none of that putting sugar in it and all that. It was just a gut reaction. I assumed they was tooled up, they was going to hurt me. And I thought, fuck it, and I hurt them. So a couple of other occasions, there was similar things. And then one day, a black fellow used to go, old boy used to go to church with him. And he said to me, Frankie, he said, you carry on like this. He said, they're going to call you Frank the Baptist. And the name stuck. I got called Frank the Baptist for the rest of the time I was there. But as I say, it wasn't premeditated. It wasn't, it wasn't something. But what I did learn very quickly was you can't get nicked rubbing water. You can get nicked rubbing at all. You can get nicked for throwing the water over somebody, obviously. But 9 times out of 10, when someone comes in and you've got a jug of hot water and they've got a silly little tool they've made, and you say, well, come on then, I know he's going to fucking feel the worst out of 2 of us. And it worked. It did work.
What was it like coming out, and how did you turn your life around?
I think the assumption is that when I come out, that I'd done my bit and that was it. And you've got to remember that all the time I was in there, and this is something I explain this to people as well. You can't think you're better than anybody else. So although I was saying I wasn't a villain, I'm saying I'm a loyalist prisoner. All the letters that I got, from Northern Ireland and Maze, etc., Magabry and places, bits of artwork that was sent to me, cards sent to me regularly. So my mindset throughout the whole of that sentence was, I'm a loyalist prisoner. But you can't walk around in wings thinking you're someone special. You got a mix of everybody else. You got to be part of the same community. But when I come out, I hadn't changed. I still had that militant head about me. And I don't think people realise that. In fact, the last line of the book says, what a mate says to me, where do we go from here? I said, business as usual. Only this time I ain't getting caught. And I came out about 5 weeks before Christmas. I went over in February. And on the Friday night, I was there at a surprise party for 2 prisoners that hadn't been out for 7 years. A bomb went off in Docklands. And a bloke turned to me and he went, "Oh, Frank, this isn't good for the peace process." And I said, "Fuck the peace process. A bomb just gone off in my city." So, over the next coming months, I just returned to exactly the same way I was. Now, did I want peace? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I wanted peace. When I went over, I didn't see the peace. That was the difference. I didn't see it. I saw community still being terrorised. And I felt obliged to continue to defend those communities. But eventually, people proved that they did want peace. They genuinely wanted peace. And that was a wake-up call for me. And I discovered other ways of helping communities, which will be in the second book. That'll be explained far more in the second book. I suddenly realised you can help people without, you can help one lot of people without going to hurt another lot of people. And then over the years, you start to realise as well, there's a famous man, John McMichael, very well respected man politically and military-wise as well. And he sort of coined the phrase, no one was exclusively right and no one was exclusively wrong. And I think if you start off from that basis, it's a good point to work from, and we need to explain that to the younger generation now. We need to say, listen, you've got more in common than what you know. Not very good at the moment because there's things going on over there that it's not good, and some people are being exploited, and some people are like me. They genuinely think they're fighting for their community. They think they're fighting for their country, and I respect them for it. Believe you me, I respect them. But I just don't want them to go too far, because once you get caught doing something you shouldn't, that's it. That stigma's with you for the rest of your life.
Good words, great words. So, I mean, you're a motivational speaker now. You've turned your life around. You've had that first book out. You're writing a new book. You've got podcasts going. What made you take up the motivational speaking? Was it to get the message out about your life, and so that people could learn from your journey?
Yeah. Well, it is that. If what I can say, I mean, I'm a big supporter at the moment, and I'm hoping to put that more into action. This, change your life, put down your knife. I'll be interviewing somebody shortly, and we will dedicate that particular podcast to that. But that could just as equally, knife crime could just as easily be, turned it, to gun crime or crime in general, for that matter. And if my experiences, of prison, and I've only just touched on it, quite frankly, there's some horrendous things I witnessed in prison, and even say to people as well that, some of the things, if I'd have had the access to certain things, I'd have done far worse. And I haven't told you the story of, we were trying to purchase hand grenades, and we physically saw the hand grenades. They were there to be used. What would we have done it with all of them hand grenades? How much havoc would we have caused? And I would have been a willing participant in that. So I look back on it and think, how on earth, how did I get to that stage? How did I go from having a punch up of football? In fact, how did I actually go from a kid that went to Sunday school, and basically was taught love and peace? How the fuck did I land up as, part of a paramilitary organisation? So I'm saying, that's what I'll say to people. Be careful when you get on that treadmill, because you don't know where it's going to take you. And if I can stop you getting on it, then that's what I will do. That's what I'll do all day long. So there's lots of, I'm just updating my website, because there's a lot more information that could be put on there that would explain what exactly it is that I'm talking about. But as I say, I don't shy away. People ask me questions, I'll tell them the truth, because I think that's the best way. The second book will show more of a transition from that militant side to the peaceful side, and how I help certain communities, actively help those communities. I joined the Professional Speaking Association, who are helping me to become a better speaker. If you're speaking to audiences, whether that's corporate audiences, or if you're going to go to prison or schools or colleges. But I've got plenty of stories, I've got plenty of experience, plenty of knowledge, and whenever I get the opportunity to pass that on, that's what I intend to do.
Before we promote, I put your website up there, frankportinari.com, but the internet has probably made things worse rather than better, Frank, because when you were going through your life, the internet wasn't there to influence you and give you those signs. You were involved in football, and you meet somebody in a pub, and that's how you became involved in this. You had your own politics, and that was the way you went in that particular direction. With the internet, it's quite easy to radicalize and change people's perception of something, whether it's with video or whether it's with the written word. Is that something we should be worried about as a society?
I would have milked it. If this had been around in my day, I'd have milked it all day long. And I see young fellas now talk the way they're talking on the internet, and social media. And I think, fellas, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're being far too honest. You're being, in what you're saying. You're either saying it on YouTube or and I don't really understand the consequences. I really don't think they understand the consequences. And I believe that if people are going to insist that the spotlight is put upon Islamic terrorism, do you honestly think that there isn't going to have to be a balance? So you might not be the most extreme right-wing person, but it needs to be balanced up. The police need to balance it up. So you might just be some mouthy 16-year-old kid, and you might have a manual in your house about guns. That's enough to get you done for terrorism, and or if you're a loyalist and you mean well, you're a young kid in Northern Ireland, you're in Belfast or Londonderry, and you think, my dad fought for my country, my uncle did, my granddad did. It's my responsibility. I get it. Believe you me, I get it, and there's respect for me. You're going to get caught. You're going to get caught. When they decide to throw that net over you, you're getting caught. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. And the irony is, when I got caught, not long after, a very good friend of mine from South London got caught with weapons going on a ferry up in Scotland, and another associate from the East Midlands, he got caught. Now, the peace process was coming about, and I honestly believe the police said, you know what, we spent years chasing after these fuckers. Let's just throw the net over them, get them out of the way. We've got other things that, we got more important, particularly the Islamic thing, obviously. So it's not clever. You're going away. You might think you're doing good. You might think you're a patriot. You might think you're fighting a cause, and you are. But you're gonna get caught. I've got no doubt about it. You're gonna get caught. So if you want to do something to your community, get involved with politics, represent your community, get real power. Command what goes on in your community, and have some real power. Don't be sitting in a cell thinking about what have I landed up here. And people say to me, if you've got, do you regret it? Because of the personality that I've got, I don't really regret it. It's just my life. It's just the way I'm passionate about everything I do.
It was the path you ended up on. It was a path that was mapped out for you.
Yeah. And now that passion, I want to direct that where I'm doing good for. Well, listen, I always thought I was doing good anyway, because I thought I was defending people. I thought I was standing up with people. I didn't see the wrong in it. I didn't see the wrong in it at all. And if I'm honest, I was quite proud of it. So people say to me now, sometimes they say to me, "Oh, have you ever said sorry?" And I said, "Well, if I say sorry, what about all the blokes I led over the years? Am I apologising for them? That's not my responsibility to do that. That's up to them." But no, I should, any means I've got to say to people, try and avoid getting yourself in trouble. It's just not worth it.
We'll finish with this question from John. He's one of our sponsors, acutechshop.co.uk. He says, what's your ambitions now, Frank, and where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
Well, thanks for asking that question, John. I'll tell you what I've identified in all those years, right? I've stifled any creativity that I've got. And I love writing. I like poetry. I've written lyrics for a CD. I started a flute band. Anything I get involved with, it's got to go the whole hog, you know. Again, I've written a book, and as my wife, rightly points out, you do everything for everybody else. You do everything for the cause. Anyone asks you to do anything, you drop it. You try and help them out. So now the answer to that question is one of, it's my time. It's my time now. And that creativity that I've got, I want to use to give my family security, and plus get some enjoyment out of it as well. And I'm thoroughly enjoying writing a second book. Thoroughly enjoying that. I'm thoroughly enjoying doing the podcast. I've met some really interesting people. It's in its infancy. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I've got a different range of people, an eclectic group of people. It's not one-dimensional. There's some very sad stories. There's some inspiring ones as well. And that's the criteria for coming on now. I say I want real people and inspiring people, that can give a message to people. So, in 10 years' time, tell you where I want to be. I want to be an author. I want to write a novel. After I've done the second book, I want to write a novel to prove to me I can do it, because that was the subject in school that I was good at, was English. I want to carry on with the podcasts. Even through the podcast, I'm helping people because I'm spreading their message where they need help or they need assistance. And although we ask, every episode I ask for a sponsor, if anyone's interested in any sponsorship. But I also add now, but by the same token, we want to give something back. So if someone's got a charitable event that they want advertised, and give us enough warning, and we're gladly do that. But I'd say the writing, certainly the writing. I'd like to carry on with the speaking. I'd like to speak to audiences and pass on some of the knowledge and experiences that I've got. And the podcast, and wherever it goes from there. More than one person's asked about doing a screenplay for the book. Somebody intimated about making a film, but I don't get carried away, Steve. People say something like that to me. I put it away in a drawer, and if it comes back one day, they say, Frank, it's time to open the drawer. All well and good.
Great stuff. Well, that's Frank's website on the screen there, frankportinari.com. Well worth visiting that. And as I say, Frank's got his podcast. We've stuck the link down below in the description box. And like we discussed before, when we came on, air, I'm more than happy to come on your podcast as well, mate. So give us a shout if you want us to.
That's another thing. That's another thing, Steve. Anyone that's invited me onto theirs, I'll always make a point of invite them onto to my particular podcast. Anybody that is about to go on, if they do want to go onto the website within the next week, can you just hold fire on that, please? Because it is literally just being updated, because I've written some new articles, and it goes into a lot of detail of things that I haven't mentioned today, and then there's some good messages basically amongst that. And I'm grateful to be on a show where it's a Newcastle supporter, because it's one of the few clubs that Tottenham are currently above at the moment. So I've got to make the most. I've got to make the most of that, fellas. I'm sorry, all my Geordie friends out there. There's not many teams below us.
You might get a point deducting, for trying to join the Super League. So you never know.
Yeah. Oh, that's not the fault of the fans, is it? It's not, mate. It's not. It's not the fault of the fans, but. That was a farce, wasn't it, Steve? That was an absolute farce. How on earth did they think they was going to get away with that?
Unbelievable, mate. Unbelievable. But we'll live to fight another day. John says, cheers for the answer and good luck with the books, etc. So thanks for that, John. And if anybody watching can sponsor Frank's podcast as well, give him a shout at his website. There we go. I'll just name check it again, frankportinari.com. Frank, been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We went slightly over the hour, but I make no apologies for that when people are enjoying it. And thanks again, and look forward to come on your podcast soon, mate. So take care.
I should look forward to it, Steve. I should definitely look forward to that, and I'll keep you in touch. And thanks to all your followers as well. Thanks to all your followers. Thanks very much.
Make sure you subscribe to Frank's channel. It's down below in the description box. Take care. Good night.
Lovely. Cheers, fellas.